It was a calm Saturday morning in Willow Creek Estates, the kind of place that looked picture-perfect from the outside. Lawns were freshly cut, fences stood in neat white lines, and the sound of sprinklers clicking in rhythm filled the air. The kind of neighborhood that looked peaceful, until you looked a little closer. Mark Jenkins, a retired Army veteran in his late 40s, preferred mornings like this. Quiet, simple, predictable. After years of chaos overseas, peace was a luxury. Every day he followed the same routine: coffee at 6:30, leash on Luna by 7, and a slow walk around the Central Park by 7:15. Luna, his golden retriever, wasn't just any dog. She was his lifeline, a certified service animal trained to alert him when his PTSD symptoms spiked. She could sense tension before he even knew it himself. Her bright blue vest read, "Do not distract service dog on duty." But her gentle eyes and wagging tail made it hard for people to resist a pet. Mark had lived in Willow Creek for 3 years now. Most neighbors were polite, the kind that waved but never really talked. Still, he liked it that way, predictable, quiet. As he and Luna approached the neighborhood fountain, the morning sun glinting off the water, Mark felt at ease. Luna trotted happily beside him, nose twitching, tail swishing. For once, everything felt normal. Until it didn't. A sharp, high-pitched voice sliced through the calm like a siren. "Hey, you there? You can't bring that animal in here." Mark turned, startled. From across the cul-de-sac, a woman in a bright pink visor and matching jogging outfit was speedwalking toward him, clutching a clipboard and, oddly enough, a spray bottle. Oh no. It was her. Karen Thompson, the self-appointed HOA enforcement officer, though no such position officially existed. She was infamous in the neighborhood for memorizing every rule in the HOA handbook and making up a few of her own. She had reported kids for riding bikes too loudly, fined a man for having the wrong shade of mailbox paint, and once even measured someone's grass with a ruler. Mark sighed under his breath. Not today. Karen's sneakers squeaked on the pavement as she marched closer, eyes locked on Luna like she'd spotted a criminal. "You can't bring that animal into community spaces," she snapped, voice shrill enough to make a couple of pigeons flutter off the fountain's edge. Mark frowned, trying to keep calm. "Ma'am, Luna's my service dog. She's legally allowed everywhere I go." Karen ignored him completely, flipping through her clipboard like she was reading from the 10 Commandments. HOA Section 14B clearly states no pets are allowed within 30 feet of the fountain. It's a hygiene and safety concern. "She's not a pet," Mark said, steady but firm. "She's a service animal under the Americans with Disabilities Act. That rule doesn't apply." Karen's nostrils flared. "Oh, don't start quoting laws to me, Mr. HOA rules are rules. We have standards here. Federal law outranks HOA policy," Mark replied, his patience thinning. "If you have a problem, take it up with the board, not me." Karen's eyes narrowed, her hand tightening around the spray bottle. "Don't test me," she warned. "This area is for residents only." Mark blinked. "I am a resident." "I don't recognize you," she said flatly. Mark exhaled slowly. "I've lived here 3 years." But she wasn't listening. Her gaze darted to Luna, who had sat down obediently at Mark's feet, head tilted in confusion. The gentle retriever gave a soft, curious bark, and that was apparently enough to send Karen over the edge. "Oh, so she's barking now? That's a noise violation." "Ma'am," Mark said through clenched teeth, "please step back." But Karen didn't. Instead, she raised the spray bottle. "If you won't follow the rules, I'll make sure this dog learns." Before Mark could even process what she meant, she pressed down. A sharp mist sprayed out, hitting Luna right in the face. Luna yelped in surprise, stumbling back, pawing at her eyes. Mark froze, then dropped to his knees, heart racing. "Luna, it's okay, baby. I got you," she whimpered, pressing her head into his chest as he tried to wipe her eyes with his sleeve. His hand shook not from fear, but from something deeper. A mix of fury, disbelief, and the rush of old memories that came flooding back from years in the field. He looked up at Karen, his voice trembling with controlled rage. "What did you just do?" Karen didn't flinch. "It's just water and vinegar," she said dismissively. "Harmless. Maybe it'll teach you both a lesson about following the rules." Mark stared at her, stunned. "You sprayed a service dog? A medical animal? Do you have any idea what you just did?" By now, several neighbors had peeked out from their porches and driveways. Mrs. Patel from across the street dropped her gardening gloves, running over. "Karen, what are you doing?" "That's Mark's service dog." Karen rolled her eyes. "Service dog, pet, whatever. No animals near the fountain." Mrs. Patel's face twisted in horror. "That's illegal, Karen. You can't do that." But Karen just crossed her arms, unmoved. "Maybe now he'll learn the rules like everyone else." Mark stood up slowly, his expression cold and steady. Luna leaned against his leg, still blinking through tears. He looked directly at Karen and said in a low, controlled voice, "You made a big mistake." The entire street went silent. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the sound of dripping water from the fountain, the same fountain that had just become the center of something much bigger than anyone expected. And as Mark led Luna away, one thing was clear. This wasn't over, not even close. "Are you out of your mind?" Mark shouted, kneeling beside Luna, His hands trembled as he tried to wipe the stinging spray from her eyes. Luna whimpered softly, blinking rapidly, her tail tucked between her legs. Every sound, her quiet cries, the distant hum of sprinklers, the clicking of Karen's shoes on the pavement, felt magnified in that awful silence that followed. Karen crossed her arms and let out an exaggerated sigh, completely unfazed by the chaos she'd caused. "She shouldn't be here," she said flatly, her voice carrying that air of superiority she was known for. "I'm enforcing community policy. We have rules for a reason." Mark looked up, his expression caught somewhere between disbelief and anger. "Community policy doesn't give you the right to assault a service dog," he said sharply. "You have no authority to do what you just did." Karen rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, don't be dramatic. It was just a little spray. You people always think the rules don't apply to you." "You people," Mark repeated, his tone hardening. "What does that mean?" But before she could answer, the sound of screen doors creaking open broke the standoff. One by one, neighbors began stepping out of their homes, drawn by the commotion. Curtains twitched, cell phones peeked out from behind half-closed blinds. The morning calm had shattered into whispers and gasps. Mrs. Patel, who lived right across the street, hurried over, still wearing her gardening gloves. "Karen," she shouted, her voice trembling, "what on earth are you doing?" "That's Mark's service animal." Karen whipped around, looking offended. "Service animal? Pet? Same thing," she snapped. "HOA rules say no animals around the fountain, period. That's the rule. And rules are rules." Mrs. Patel looked horrified. "That's not just a pet, Karen. That dog is trained, she's medical support. You can't spray her." Karen waved a dismissive hand. "If the dog's so special, he shouldn't be bringing her to a community area that clearly says no pets allowed. It's unsanitary. I'm doing everyone a favor." Mark finally rose to his feet, his expression tightening. His military posture returned back straight, jaw set, voice controlled but cutting. "That's not how the law works," he said. "You can't override federal regulations with HOA nonsense. Service animals are protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. You have no right to stop me from walking my dog anywhere I go." Karen's lips curled into a mocking smile. "Federal law, HOA law, whatever. This is a private community, and we have our own rules. If you don't like it, call the police." Mark's eyes narrowed. "Gladly." He pulled out his phone and started dialing. The quiet murmur of the crowd grew louder, a mix of whispers and gasps, spreading like wildfire. "She sprayed his dog," someone muttered from a porch. "I saw it. She just walked up and did it." Another whispered, "Typical Karen," a voice from the back added. But not everyone was on Mark's side. A tall man in a golf shirt, Mr. Donnelly, folded his arms and muttered, "Well, the HOA does have rules for a reason. Dogs around public spaces can be a problem." Mrs. Patel turned toward him in disbelief. "A service dog is not a problem. This is discrimination." Mr. Donnelly shrugged. "I'm just saying, if we start making exceptions for one person, where does it end?" And just like that, the neighborhood began to fracture right there on the sidewalk. Lines were drawn, those who believed in following the rules, and those who believed in doing what's right. Luna whimpered again, pressing her head against Mark's leg as if to comfort him. He reached down and gently stroked her fur, whispering, "It's okay, girl. You didn't do anything wrong." Then he looked up at Karen, his eyes cold with quiet fury. "Do you have any idea," he said slowly, "what that spray could have done to her? Service dogs aren't just pets, they're trained medical partners. You assaulted a working animal. Do you think that's something your HOA can protect you from?" Karen's smirk faltered for the first time. "Don't threaten me, mister. You'll regret it." "I'm not threatening you," Mark said, voice calm and low. "I'm calling the law." As the phone rang in his hand, the silence deepened. A few neighbors backed away, not wanting to get caught in whatever was about to unfold. Others stayed glued to the scene, filming quietly from their driveways. In Willow Creek Estates, drama was rare, and this was the kind that would fuel neighborhood gossip for weeks. Finally, Mark spoke into the phone. "Yes, officer. I'd like to report an incident. A woman in my neighborhood just assaulted my service dog." Karen's eyes widened. "Assault? Don't you dare twist this around. You're the one breaking rules, not me." But Mark didn't even glance her way. "Yes," he continued calmly, "the dog's fine now, but I want an official report. Yes, I'll stay here." When he hung up, the tension was suffocating. The crowd was split, half glaring at Karen, half looking nervous about what the HOA would say. Mrs. Patel stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on Mark's shoulder. "Don't worry," she said softly. "You're doing the right thing," Karen scoffed. "The right thing would have been following community guidelines. You'll see the HOA will back me up." Mark met her gaze. "We'll let the police decide that." For the first time since he'd moved into Willow Creek Estates, Mark felt the mask of perfection peel away from the neighborhood. The freshly cut grass, the perfect white fences, the pristine fountain, it all seemed hollow now. Beneath the surface of order and rules was something uglier: control, pride, and fear of anyone who dared to be different. As Luna leaned against him, still trembling slightly, Mark looked around at the crowd, the judgmental stares, the whispered gossip, the moral divide. For the first time, he realized something chilling. The real danger in Willow Creek Estates wasn't crime or noise. or pets. It was the people who thought they had the right to decide who belonged. And in that moment, Mark made a silent promise to himself and to Luna. He wouldn't let them get away with this. Not this time. The distant wail of a siren broke the thick silence that hung over the neighborhood. Heads turned, phones came out, and within minutes, a white and blue police cruiser rolled up to the curb, its lights flashing gently in the sunlight. Karen's expression changed instantly. She straightened up, adjusted her pink visor, and put on the sweetest, most innocent smile she could muster. "Officers," she called, waving her clipboard like a flag. "Thank goodness you're here. This man is breaking HOA rules and causing a disturbance." One of the two officers, a tall man with a calm demeanor, stepped out of the vehicle, his hand resting lightly on his belt. His partner, a woman with a notepad already in hand, followed close behind. They both looked between the two, Karen, flushed and fuming, and Mark, standing steady beside Luna, who sat quietly at his heel, still wearing her blue vest. The officer spoke first. "All right, what's going on here?" Karen launched into her version immediately, her voice high and indignant. "This man brought an animal into the restricted fountain area. It's clearly against HOA policy. I asked him to leave. He refused, and now he's causing a scene." The female officer scribbled something down. "Ma'am, what kind of animal are we talking about?" Karen pointed dramatically at Luna. "That one. A dog. Look, she's not even on the approved community list. No pets are allowed near the fountain. I've told him before." Mark took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Officers," he said, his voice even, "that's not the full story. I was walking my service dog, Luna, through the community park like I do every morning. This woman came out of nowhere and sprayed her with something because she said dogs weren't allowed." The male officer frowned slightly and turned toward Karen. "Sprayed her? With what?" Karen hesitated, clutching her spray bottle behind her back. "It's just water and vinegar. Harmless. It's what I use to keep animals away from the flowers." "Did you spray it directly at the dog?" Karen's face reddened. "I maybe, but only because he wouldn't listen. We have rules." The officer's tone grew firm. "Ma'am, I'll need you to step back and lower your voice." Karen gasped as if she'd been insulted. "Me? Lower my voice? Officer, I am the HOA compliance coordinator for this neighborhood." Unofficially, someone from the crowd called out. A few chuckles rippled through the onlookers. But the officers didn't smile. The male officer turned to Mark. "Sir, can you show me any documentation for your service animal?" Mark nodded immediately and reached into his pocket. He pulled out Luna's identification tag, her ADA certification card, and even a small laminated medical note that stated his need for a service animal. "She's trained to alert me to PTSD episodes," he explained. "She's not a pet, she's medical support under federal law. She's allowed anywhere I go." The officers examined the documents carefully. The female officer knelt down, looking at Luna. "She seems very calm," she said softly. Luna tilted her head and gave a small wag of her tail. "That's part of her training," Mark said. "She never reacts aggressively, even when she's frightened." He glanced pointedly at Karen, which is more than I can say for some people. Karen crossed her arms tightly. "Ada or whatever," she said with a dismissive wave. "HOA has higher standards. We have to protect our community spaces. If we start letting animals in, what's next? Goats at the pool." The officers exchanged looks. The male officer raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, that's not how it works." Karen's smile faltered. "Excuse me. Federal law protects individuals with service animals," he explained patiently. "An HOA can't override those rights with local or private rules. If this gentleman's dog is certified and trained, which it appears to be, she's allowed anywhere her owner goes, including here." "But this is private property," Karen protested. "We have our own regulations. Surely the HOA can decide who's allowed in common areas." The female officer shook her head. "The ADA applies everywhere. The public has access that includes HOA-managed areas like sidewalks, parks, and fountains. Denying that access, or interfering with a service animal, can be considered discrimination." Karen blinked, her confidence cracking. "Wait, you mean she's allowed in restricted areas?" "Everywhere her owner goes," the male officer said firmly. "And what you did, spraying the dog, could be considered harassment or even animal cruelty, depending on what's in that bottle." The words animal cruelty seemed to suck the air out of the moment. Karen's mouth opened and closed like she couldn't quite form words. "That's ridiculous. I was just enforcing community rules." The officer nodded slowly. "We'll be the judge of that." He turned to his partner. "Ma'am, can you get her statement? I'll need to take a few pictures of the dog for the report." As the female officer began jotting down Karen's increasingly defensive rambling, Mark knelt beside Luna, stroking her fur gently. "You're okay, girl," he whispered. "You did good." Luna gave a soft, reassuring nuzzle in response. The officer crouched beside them, snapping a few photos with his phone. "She seems all right, but if she starts acting strange, I'd suggest a vet visit just to be safe." "You said it was vinegar." Mark nodded. "At least that's what she claims. I'll get her checked out." When the officer stood up, his tone shifted slightly, more authoritative now. "Mr. Jenkins, We'll file this as a harassment report. You'll get a case number by tomorrow. If you decide to press charges, Animal Control will also want to review the footage. Karen's head snapped up. Footage? What footage? A voice from behind answered Mrs. Patel's. She held up her phone, camera still rolling. Mine, and the Simmons doorbell cam caught everything, too. Karen's face drained of color. The officer nodded approvingly. That'll make things a lot easier. Thank you, ma'am. Mark stood tall, feeling the weight of justice. Small, but steady, beginning to tilt his way. The crowd around them had gone silent, watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. As the officers stepped aside to discuss the next steps. Karen stood frozen, her clipboard trembling slightly in her hand. The realization had finally sunk in. She wasn't the authority here anymore. For once, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA had met a law even she couldn't bend. The tables had turned, and everyone knew it. A week later, the quiet neighborhood of Willow Creek Estates was anything but quiet. The incident had exploded online after a neighbor's doorbell. Camera caught every second of what happened. Karen marching across the street, yelling, and spraying Luna. Within 48 hours, the footage had spread across social media, racking up over 400,000 views. Comments poured in from all over the country. Who does that to a service dog? This woman needs serious consequences. That veteran deserves justice. The neighborhood's reputation, once one of order and perfection, was now tied to viral infamy. Cars slowed down at the entrance of the subdivision, drivers whispering, "That's where it happened." HOA members' inboxes flooded with angry emails. Even the local news picked it up under the headline, "Veteran Service Dog Attacked by HOA Enforcer." And now, the HOA board had no choice but to hold an emergency meeting. The small community hall was packed that evening. Folding chairs filled every corner, and the air was thick with tension. Residents murmured quietly, clutching copies of the meeting agenda. The soft hum of the ceiling fan was the only sound breaking the silence. At the front table sat the HOA board, 5 members looking far less confident than usual. At the center was Mr. Avery, the HOA president, nervously tapping a pen on his clipboard. To his left sat Karen, dressed in a neatly pressed blazer, her expression tight and defensive. She had traded her bright pink visor for something more professional, but no amount of wardrobe change could fix the glare she gave Mark when he walked in. Mark entered calmly, Luna trotting beside him. The golden retriever looked much better, her eyes bright again, her movements confident. She wore her service vest proudly, drawing sympathetic smiles from neighbors as they whispered, "That's the dog from the video." He found a seat near the front, his posture relaxed but his eyes focused. He wasn't here to start a fight. He was here to finish one. Mr. Avery cleared his throat. "All right, everyone," he began, his voice wavering slightly. "We're here to address the recent incident that occurred between 2 residents of Willow Creek Estates. It's been brought to our attention quite publicly, and we take it very seriously." Karen straightened her back and forced a polite smile. "Yes," she said quickly, "and I think we can all agree it's gotten way out of hand. I'd prefer to resolve this peacefully." Mark looked at her for a long moment before standing. His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "Peacefully. You sprayed a trained service dog and humiliated me in front of my neighbors. And now that the whole internet's watching, you suddenly want peace." A murmur ran through the crowd. Karen clenched her fists but tried to keep her composure. "I already told the officers it was an accident," she said sharply. "I was just enforcing HOA rules." "Maybe you should've," Mark cut her off. "You sprayed a working animal doing her job. You violated federal disability law. HOA rules don't give you the right to discriminate." The room went silent. Even the ceiling fan seemed to pause. Mr. Avery cleared his throat again, this time more firmly. "Karen, the board reviewed the footage, and we've spoken with legal counsel. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, Mark's rights supersede any HOA regulations. You are in clear violation." Karen's jaw dropped. "Wait, what? You can't be serious. I was doing my job." Mrs. Patel stood up from the audience. "You don't have a job, Karen," she said loudly. "You appointed yourself. The board never gave you authority to enforce anything." A ripple of laughter, sharp but brief, swept through the room. Karen's face turned crimson. "Oh, please," she snapped. "You all depend on me to keep this neighborhood in order." "Order?" someone muttered. "You've been terrorizing half the street." The board president held up his hand for silence. "Enough. The decision has already been made. Karen, as of tonight, you are suspended from any HOA involvement for 6 months. Effective immediately." Gasps filled the room. Karen's face contorted in disbelief. "Suspended? You're joking. You can't suspend me. I am the You are acting like the HOA, Mr. Avery said evenly. "That's not the same thing. And in addition to your suspension, you'll be required to issue a formal, written apology to Mark and to the residents of Willow Creek Estates for your actions." Karen stood abruptly, her chair screeching against the floor. "This is ridiculous. You're all turning on me because of some stupid video." Mark finally spoke again, his tone even and calm, almost too calm. "It's not about the video, Karen. It's about respect. For people, for service animals, for laws that exist to protect those who need them. You crossed a line." Karen's glare could have cut glass, but there was nothing left to say. She grabbed her clipboard, the same one she had carried during the incident, and stormed out of the room, the door slamming behind her. The crowd buzzed with whispers as she disappeared down the hallway. Mrs. Patel turned toward Mark with a small, proud smile. "You did it," she said quietly. "You stood up to her." Mark exhaled slowly, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. "I didn't want revenge," he said softly. "I just wanted respect for me and for Luna." Mr. Avery nodded, looking down at the papers before him. "You've got it," he said, "and I think the whole neighborhood just learned something about what that really means." As Mark turned to leave, Luna trotted happily beside him, her tail wagging gently. For the first time in weeks, the air outside the community hall felt lighter. The whispers that followed him now weren't of judgment or suspicion, they were of admiration. In a neighborhood obsessed with rules, one man and his dog had reminded everyone that compassion was worth more than control, and from that night on, Willow Creek Estates would never look at their so-called rules enforcer the same way again. A few quiet days passed after the HOA meeting, days that felt strangely peaceful in Willow Creek Estates. The tension that had once hung thick in the air seemed to have lifted, leaving behind a cautious calm. Mark noticed it during his morning walks with Luna. The same neighbors who used to glance away now waved at him. Kids smiled when they saw Luna's red service vest, and some even asked, with genuine curiosity, what she did to help him. Then one morning, as the sun painted golden streaks across the neatly trimmed lawns, Mark opened his front door and froze. Sitting neatly on his welcome mat was an envelope. No return address, no fancy stationery, just a plain folded letter. His name was written across it in shaky cursive. He didn't need to guess who it was from. He stepped inside, sat down at his kitchen table, and slowly unfolded the note. The paper trembled slightly in his hands. The handwriting was unmistakable, sharp loops, deliberate strokes, but the tone was different. "Mark, I didn't understand the law. I thought I was protecting the neighborhood, but I let my authority go too far. I'm sorry for hurting Luna, and for embarrassing you. I was wrong." Karen. Mark stared at the words for a long moment, saying nothing. He glanced down at Luna, who sat beside him, her big brown eyes calm and trusting. She wagged her tail gently, almost as if she understood what the letter meant. "Looks like someone's learning," Mark murmured, a faint smile touching his lips. He folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer, not out of bitterness, but as a reminder that sometimes even the loudest people can change when they're forced to face the truth. Over the next few weeks, something remarkable happened. The same neighborhood that had once turned into a battleground slowly began to heal. The HOA, under Mr. Avery's direction, organized an event called Service Dog Awareness Day. Flyers went up on every mailbox. The community park was decorated with banners that read, "Respect every hero, human or canine." Local veterans from a nearby support group were invited to speak about how service animals save lives, not just emotionally, but medically. One veteran shared how his service dog detected his seizures before they happened. Another explained how his dog woke him from night terrors after combat trauma. As they spoke, the audience, which included nearly every family from Willow Creek Estates, sat in stunned silence. Karen didn't attend that first event, but she sent cupcakes from the local bakery with a note that read, "Thank you for teaching me." It wasn't much, but it was something. And when Mr. Avery read her note aloud at the end of the event, the crowd applauded. Children ran around the park with small, hand-painted posters that said things like, "Service dogs are heroes too," and "Respect the vest." Luna, sitting proudly beside Mark, became the star of the day. Everyone wanted to pet her, though Mark made sure they asked first. "She's working," he explained kindly to the kids, "but she appreciates all the love." By the time the sun set, it felt like the neighborhood had truly changed. People weren't just aware of the law now, they understood the why behind it. Compassion had replaced judgment. Even Karen, who had once been the symbol of control and confrontation, began to show signs of quiet transformation. She no longer roamed the streets with her clipboard. The shrill complaints that once echoed through the cul-de-sac faded away. She started small, a wave here, a polite nod there, slowly rebuilding the trust she had shattered. One afternoon, Mrs. Patel mentioned to Mark that Karen had donated to the local animal rescue shelter, and not just money. She'd volunteered to help with cleaning and walking the dogs. She even asked if they needed help with fundraising, Mrs. Patel said with a smirk. Apparently she's channeling her enforcement energy into something useful. Mark chuckled softly at that. "Good," he said. "Maybe Luna taught her something." As weeks turned into months, the story of HOA Karen versus the service dog became something of a legend in the neighborhood. New residents heard about it during block parties, always with the same moral at the end: don't mess with a service dog, and never underestimate a calm man with the truth on his side. For Mark, though the real victory wasn't the viral fame or the apology, it was the shift he saw around him. Neighbors who now asked questions instead of assuming, children who learned empathy early, and a community that discovered respect mattered more than rigid rules. One crisp Saturday afternoon, Mark and Luna walked through the neighborhood, the same path they had taken on that terrible day near the fountain. The air was calm, the water glistening under the sunlight. A few kids waved at them from their bikes. Even Karen, trimming her roses across the street, looked up and gave a small, genuine smile. Mark paused by the fountain. The memory of that moment, the shouting, the fear, the disbelief, flickered through his mind, but it felt distant now, like a storm long past. He looked down at Luna, who wagged her tail and nudged his leg. "Yeah," he said softly, "we're good now." He tossed a coin into the fountain, watching it sink through the rippling water. It wasn't a wish for luck, it was gratitude. For change? For forgiveness? For growth. Because sometimes, standing up for your rights isn't about anger or revenge. It's about education. About showing others that strength doesn't come from control. It comes from compassion and courage. And in Willow Creek Estates, that lesson had been learned the hard way, but learned. Nonetheless, as the sun dipped below the rooftops, and the sound of sprinklers hummed through the lawns, Mark walked home with Luna by his side. The street that once felt hostile now felt like home again, and somewhere deep inside, even Karen probably knew one loyal service dog had done what no HOA rule ever could, brought humanity back to the neighborhood.